Attention, now arriving at your destination. The last house on the block.
Welcome back to Recovery Uncovered, episode 9. Thanks everybody tuning in on live. We're back after a couple months off. Had some life things going on and a little Christmas vacation, but we're back in action in full swing. Got a very special guest today, Mr. Will May, who I actually have grown up with since, I don't know what, we were 12 years old when we started middle school together?
We're like 10, I believe. Fifth grade.
Yeah, that's right, because it was 5th grade was middle school back then. And so, Will and I went to middle school together. He moved off back from Tennessee down to Mississippi. And when I moved down here a couple years ago, we got to reconnect, both sober at that point, which was a pretty cool turn of events to be able to move to a whole new city and already have a built-in friend. But we're going to go into Will's recovery story today. We're going to talk a little bit about what it was like for him when he first started drinking and using, the events that led up into going to treatment, getting into recovery, and then what his life's like now. So with that being said, Will, if you want to kind of start us off and just let us know, like maybe what was that first drink like? What was that first use? And we'll just kind of go from there.
Awesome, yeah. Well, I had my first drink of alcohol when I was 10 years old. Yeah, excuse me, I was 11.
Okay.
It was in Jackson, Tennessee, where we grew up together. I can remember we were in someone's basement, and I had they were passing around some red wine.
Ooh.
And they had I was in 6th grade, and they were all 8th graders.
Hanging out with the older kids.
Exactly. And leading up to this point, I'd always kind of been, I was overweight, and I had trouble making friends and stuff like that. And so when I found the alcohol, I took that first drink, felt comfortable.
Yeah.
A comfort I'd never known. Didn't know it was available. And that was my very first drink. And I remember, we ran out of that red wine bottle, and I wanted more, From
the very beginning.
Very beginning.
Yeah, that was my experience as well. That first drink, it was like finally getting that, just that deep sigh of relief of I didn't know that I was missing this, but damn it, I was. So what was kind of that progression for you? So you had that, that first drink at 11 or whatever. Was it, all right, I'm all in, I want to do this as often as I can? Was it every weekend? Kind of walk me through what it looked like leading up to, when it got bad.
Yeah, so it's hard for me to talk about the alcohol without talking about the cigarettes, right? Because that was kind of my first vice also.
Okay.
So, before that, I'd been experimenting with my mom's cigarettes. And that was kind of me changing the way I felt, you know what I mean? And being bad with substances, with drug, nicotine's a drug. So that was my real first introduction.
Was that before your first drink?
Yeah, that was a year before maybe I'd started stealing her cigarettes.
So was that
every now and then
stealing one from the pack, or were you smoking the butts that she left?
No, she had packs all over the house. I started to nickel and dime her a little bit, you know what I mean?
Not enough where she noticed.
Right, yeah, she did, yeah. I never got close to getting caught, I don't think. Then eventually she just kind of let me, so
yeah,
that was cool.
I don't think I first smoked a cigarette till I was 16. I was working at a Moe's Southwest Grill, and actually this dude named Jamal, he was my GM at the time, and we had a long shift, crazy dinner rush, and we were all sitting out on the patio afterwards, and he's like, "You want a Newport?" And so a Newport 100, that was the first square I ever smoked. That's what we called them back then.
Yeah.
Let me bum a square.
That's right.
Or a Bogue.
Yeah.
Had all the code names for them. But that was really the first thing that I ever did that changed the way I felt too. I don't remember really liking it at first, but it wasn't long after that somebody gave me a pinch of Grizzly Wintergreen, and I was hooked. So cigarettes at 10 or so, alcohol at 11. What did that look like when you started to drink more regularly? Was that quickly after that first drink, or?
No, it certainly wasn't quickly, because it's it was hard for an 11-year-old to get your hands on some alcohol.
Yeah.
But I definitely I had a new place to point my attention towards. I can't remember exactly maybe what I was thinking about it or how that looked like exactly, but I can remember getting my hands on it a few times. leading up to that point, and just loving it, and like really, I mean, it was an answered prayer. It felt like, and had so much fun. And and then eventually, like, I remember, like, 'cause I had an older sister, and so I could kind of like get stuff from her friends sometimes, and so I'd get my hands on some alcohol and whenever I could. It wasn't until about ninth grade that I could like get it pretty regularly.
Yeah.
That's when it became like a, twice a week type of situation, I guess.
Okay. So it's kind of like, whenever you could, and then a couple, 3-4 years later, it started to progress to like actual regular drinking. Tell me about what, like, the other things that you were doing during that time period. Like, I don't know, the story that comes to mind is like, I remember you telling me about taking your mom's car and like driving around trying to impress some chicks or something. So like, there wasn't just like straight and narrow in between the drinking. What else, kind of were you getting into around that age?
Yeah, I mean, any kind of trouble I could get into, I feel like I was, I feel like I remember stealing my mom's car. We for a little joyride, and there was always like shooting fireworks off at people, or there's always a paintball gun involved somewhere, or maybe a little vandalism here and there, like something like that. I tried marijuana for the first time when I was in 8th grade. This is still when we were in Jackson, Tennessee, on a picnic table at a neighborhood pool, rolled up in a brown paper sack, if I remember correctly.
Ooh.
Yeah, like a lunch bag,
That's rough.
Yeah, I think we got like maybe one puff out of the whole thing. It was like, it's not an impressive performance by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
And, but like for me, my, at home though, I can remember like there's a few times when I was getting my hands on alcohol, and like I would get like, I remember one time I threw up everywhere, and like, I remember like, just like kind of living, my room was really gross kind of thing. Like I had like I was dipping a lot at the time. So like, I was just like, any kind of rule I could break or like thing I could do that was reserved for older people, like that's what I wanted to be doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I didn't want to be 13. I wanted to be 21.
I relate to that. I remember like being a kid, and I wasn't doing any of that stuff at the same time period that you were. I had like one drink at 16 and like 3 drinks at prom, but like I never got drunk until I went to school, and smoking weed and other stuff followed shortly after that. But I remember that feeling of like, man, I just want to be able to like do what I want to do. I don't want to follow these stupid rules, like, which is, as a 30-year-old thinking about myself at like 12 or 13, thinking like, oh, I'm ready to be grown. No, I wasn't. Like I didn't know up from down. But at that point in time, like when you believe that, you're like, man, I just can't wait till I get older. I can't wait till I get my car. I can't wait till I have my freedom, which, I mean, some of that I think every kid experiences. But a lot of it for me was like, my parents were strict, and I didn't like those rules, and I didn't like a lot of that. So, I wanted to be able to just do what I want to do, because I'm old enough to make that decision. When you were talking about shooting the paintball gun, you made me think about this time we were there's a bunch of my friends over at one of our other friends' grandma's house out in Medina, and I don't know if you remember. I think it's it's 3-way where that BP station is as you're going into 3-way on the left.
Oh yeah,
so
that's Brother Pizza.
Yeah, my buddy's grandma's house was like directly across Highway 45 there, and we were shooting a BB gun, having fun, drinking, smoking weed. I was probably like 19 or 20, and one of my friends took the BB gun and just like popped a shot off across 45 towards the gas station, and it hit somebody's back glass on their, I don't even know what kind of car it was, but it shattered it, and we scattered. Just all ran inside. We're like in hiding, thinking that the FBI is going to come after us or something. Like, that person has no idea what happened to their window. They just saw it shatter. But, I probably still owe an amend somewhere out there to that. I don't have any idea how I'd ever make that one. But it just brought that story to mind of, like, just the stupid shit that I would run around doing. Sometimes, like, just because I wanted to break the rules. But a lot of time for me, it was I wanted to be cool. Like, we kind of had the similar story of, like, I was a big old boy in middle school and didn't have a whole lot of friends. And, you know, I ended up losing some of that weight through high school and stuff, but I still, like, I always had that same level of insecurity. They're like, I'm not good enough. People look at me differently. If I can make other people think I'm cool, then maybe I'll finally believe I'm cool. And I don't think that was ever even a conscious thought until sobriety, like realizing what the motivation was behind that. But thinking back, I did so many things like, man, I got to have a American Eagle or Abercrombie, or then it was Ralph Lauren or whatever stupid brand, so that you would think like, oh man, Adam's got a Ralph Lauren on, which who cares? But like that's the places that my head went with it. But anyways, like, so started drinking with some regularity in ninth grade, started smoking weed. Did it get bad at first, or was it all good times?
Yeah, I was sitting here thinking, like, I guess like the next part of like my drinking story really begins at age 15. I think I was the summer after ninth grade when I experienced, or the first time I can remember experiencing a blackout.
Yeah.
I say that because I may have blacked out before that. I just don't remember. This
Sure.
one had the most, you know,
Impact on you?
ant bites.
Yeah.
Anyways, but I remember I was 15. I was living here in Jackson, Mississippi. And anyone who grew up in Jackson, Mississippi knows that the Pearl River is a great place to get in trouble. Anywhere in or around the Pearl River.
Yeah.
So naturally, I can remember being down there by the Lakeland Bridge called the Cages. It's like this, you can see it from Lakeland Drive, but kids go down there and drink all the time. And I remember, you know, a big plastic bottle of vodka.
Ooh,
yeah.
probably some cheap stuff in a plastic bottle.
Cheap, yeah. And I can remember, I think I'd got my hands on some beers at that point, but it wasn't a whole lot.
Yeah.
Like maybe like a 6-pack of Tall Boys. So I remember like with the vodka, I was like, okay, the vodka, you know, that's going to like make sure I get drunk. And then the beers will kind of just like have me something to sip on,
yeah.
you know, while I'm, you know, fucked up. And so I remember like putting bottles in that vodka handle, and not even like 30 minutes later, I'm blacked out. Like, or like it happened so quickly. And it's never happened that quickly since, I don't think. Like, but it was just like complete switch. And that was a brutal day on my body and my spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that first blackout's rough. Like, because when you come out of the blackout or you wake up, it's just like, what did I do? Where have I been? How did I get here? Did you wake up with stories of debauchery that you got into from friends, or you just like don't remember? Or?
Some of it was a lot of debauchery. You know, I covered my friend's car with vomit.
Ooh.
We were like 15 and 16, and he literally got like a 2000 like 6 or 7 Jeep Grand Cherokee. It was beautiful, and I just covered it in puke.
Ooh.
And I remember I rolled down a hill into an ant bed, and I was just covered in ant bites, like, which an ant bite ends up looking like just a giant pimple.
Yeah.
So I was just covered in them, and I was bruised up, I was banged up, and like fell into a pool at some point, and like people were telling me all about this, like kind of funny, and it was kind of like kind of not that funny.
Yeah.
But it, like, for my family, it was really not funny because.
So they knew about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They knew all about it because eventually I made it home because they were like, they didn't know what else to do with me, I guess. My friends, I guess. And, but like I remember my mom coming up to me like the next morning and being like, you were violent. Like you were mean. Like you were a different person.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I had zero understanding of what alcoholism and addiction looked like at that point.
Sure.
So, I mean, I just kind of brushed it off like after a couple of days of licking my wounds.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So.
How did you feel like waking up at mom's that morning? Like, was it just complete remorse? I'm never doing this again. I'm not drinking again. Was there any of that narrative that you told yourself, or was it just like, well, I'm definitely going to drink again?
Oh, yeah. Not drinking again was out of the question for sure at that point. And I wouldn't even say like, I mean, I didn't learn a lesson by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I couldn't have and I didn't have the remorse really, I don't think, like I did until I ended up going to treatment. That's when I really started to understand myself and like that's when things took the darkest turn, was after I'd learned what I learned in rehab.
Yeah.
But at that point, yeah, it was still just chalked up to being young and dumb.
Yeah.
Like, this is what everybody's doing.
Just had a rough night, drank
Right.
a little too much.
And that's another thing too. And so that was the summer, and then that's fall. You know, I was in 10th grade, and we started going to Ole Miss football games a lot.
Okay.
And that's when, and I'd got my heart broken by a young lady, and that is when blacking out became common. But I didn't really, blacking out didn't have the same. I didn't understand it like I understand it now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because I was less dangerous back then than I became.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't driving, or like, I don't know, just wasn't as dark as I ended up being. But I remember like blacking out and like saying mean things, and like at the Grove at Ole Miss, and like I remember my uncle, who like never cusses, came home and was like, he just chewed me out, and you know, and someone had reported back to him that like Will's like getting drunk and like, you know, he's blacking out and all this stuff. And I was like, that's a lie. That's not happening. And I believed that.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, what I'm doing is normal.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm like, you know, and I was so mad about that back then. But now I'm like, that is what was happening.
Yeah.
Like, I had no idea that it was happening, but that's exactly what was happening.
But that's like 100%, you know, the way it works. Like when we're in the middle of our alcoholism or addiction, like you don't think about that. Like I remember being at University of Tennessee and just like everybody's partying. You know, lots of my friends were passing their classes, but there were several other ones failing their classes just like I was. I'm like, you know, whatever. We'll get our shit together later. It's not that big of a deal. You know, I blacked out like the first night that I got drunk. Got the spins. I was throwing up all over my dorm room. Like, awful experience. It was just like, college, bro. Like, it wasn't even a thought of like, oh man, I'm never going to do that again. I mean, those thoughts came later into my drinking and using. But at that point, it was like, it's just all fun and games.
And I mean, at that point, it's arguable that it is just fun and games, because I had friends that, you know, maybe had similar experiences, maybe not as often, but they didn't end up in the rooms and don't really need to be. But something's different in guys like you and me.
Absolutely.
Right? Like,
I know, like, I mean, I got plenty of friends that, you know, partied basically the same way I did, at least up until a point, and then the difference is they graduated school and then got a job and a wife and a kids, and they slowed down, and they may drink some still, but like not to the level that I kept going to. You know, a rational person, like after failing out of school 4 semesters in a row, would be like, maybe I need to do something different. Not where I was at, like, school's the problem, it's just not for me. But like, bro, I killed it in high school. Great ACT score. Like, I could have done great at school if I just wasn't high and drunk every night. But yeah, like I didn't even think about it. And I think part of that too is just our culture and the way that, you know, drinking is just everywhere in the mass media. It's never really portrayed as like something that you shouldn't do or that certain people should avoid. You know, all the commercials say drink responsibly, and you're like, yeah, okay, whatever, nerd.
right.
But yeah, I mean, I remember feeling that way too. So you're like, what, 16, 17, sophomore in high school. The blackouts are coming at the Grove regularly. What did it look like moving on past that point?
Well, I want to touch something you said too. Is like, up to this point, you know, you said something about like doing, like you did well in high school with your grades and stuff. And like, I just wanted to point out, like, throughout this time, like, I'm getting cheered on by people in my life. Tell me, Will, you've got all this potential. And I'm like, just falling short of everything in my life.
Yeah.
You know, I'm making friends and stuff like that, but I'm just like not taking care of myself. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I remember hearing the same thing, like, hey, you could do whatever you want to do. You got so much potential. And now with some years of sobriety, like, I feel that. I do feel that I can do what I want to do if I, you know, work hard and put my mind to it. But, like, I just didn't take them seriously back then at all. Like, you know, I mean, as a kid, you don't know what you don't know. But, like, I was like, yeah, whatever. Like, everybody's got potential, you know. But anyways,
Yeah. So I'll fast forward to my junior year of high school. That's when my life really started to get unmanageable, especially like on paper and like visible evidence. So at this point, I was drinking, 3-4 times a week, give or take, and because we had some select gas stations that we could get what we
knew
needed.
a guy.
Exactly. Yeah. We might pay a little extra.
Yeah. He was pocketing some cash on the side.
Exactly. He must have made a killing. But so when I was 16 at the time, 16 or 17, I can't remember, but it's my junior year of high school. Got arrested for drinking in a abandoned house lot. Me and this guy got taken to juvie for the weekend in Hinds County, which is like, we got the full prison experience. We got scrubs, we got the little telephone through the glass, we got it all. And so, and this was during football season too, and so I had to go back to school Monday. I was in juvie that morning and went back to, my ritzy private school on that Monday. And I thought nobody knew that I was there.
Yeah.
And so I kind of walked in and looked around, and everybody was like, I couldn't
They
believe
all
it.
knew.
Right. Which I liked that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of an outlaw. I was leaning into the outlaw thing at this point for sure. Like a rebellious teenager,
100%, dude. After the first time I got arrested, like, I mean, when talking to my parents, like, oh, I'm so sorry, remorseful, but like, I wore it as a badge of honor too. Like, yeah, bro, I spent 8 hours in jail one time. Like I'm anywhere near some hardened criminal, but that's what I wanted to portray. Like, it goes back to what I was saying. Like, I always wanted people to have a certain image of me, whether it was that I'm this good kid or whether that I'm this badass fucking playboy or whatever I thought I was in my head. But it was never the actual reality. It's just some delusions that I got going on up here.
Right. And so, I got arrested or whatever. And that weekend, that Friday, we were playing this huge game against this team from the Mississippi coast. Brett Favre's nephew was the quarterback. And
Nice.
So like it was like a marquee matchup. Like we'd never played this school before, and I got suspended from the game, and I had to listen to it on the radio. Couldn't even show up, and so like that really hurt. And in no way did I, consider that. I don't think I considered it my fault.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think I'm pretty sure I was sad about it. But I was convinced that everyone was just like blowing it out of proportion.
Still playing the victim role at that point.
Exactly. And like, I don't have a drinking problem. You just got a problem with my drinking.
Yeah.
Something like that. I think Johnny Manziel said that. I heard him say, yeah. Someone said it.
Yeah, I remember feeling that way though. Like, if y'all would just leave me alone and let me do what I want, there wouldn't be any problem. Like, even as I got into worse shit, like, it doesn't matter. Just go over there and do you. Leave me alone. Like, I got it under control.
Yeah.
Or so I thought.
Right. And so the junior year was rough, and like it was the first time I tried psychedelics. I think I probably snorted my first pill around this time. I'd taken pills before that here and there as they became available. Spraying MCL here and there kind of thing, stuff like that, but nothing crazy.
Did you ever have any reservation as you were starting to try new substances?
Oh, yeah, sure. Like, well, first I was like, I'm not going to smoke pot. I'm just going to drink. Pot's bad.
Yeah.
Then it was like, no meth or heroin, I guess, became my only, reservation.
Yeah, I mean, once you smoke pot and you realize what it is compared to, like, what parents, teachers, the DARE program, all that told you it is, you're like, well, everything else probably isn't as bad either. Like, no, it kind of is, but I remember thinking that way too. Like, I'm not going to smoke pot. And then, like, the second night I got drunk, I smoked pot out of a 5-foot bong, and blacked out, was passing out in the booth at this club in Knoxville called RT's. My buddy walked me back up to my dorm room where I proceeded to puke all down the wall because we had the lofted bed. So, like, it got to drip all the way down the wall behind my bed. And then I rolled over off the other side and puked on my rug. And it was like, let's do this again tomorrow.
Yeah. puke and rally, baby.
Yeah.
That's right.
I remember saying that shit.
Yeah, for sure. It was a lifestyle. That's how, you know. And honestly, I mean, I guess you could argue, like, when you're young, you still have time to turn it around.
Yeah.
We'll get to more of that in mind, you know, how I didn't turn it around for the longest time. But, you know, and then later on, my junior year was just a shit show. You know, I got drunk on a school night at a basketball game. We picked up some Blue Moons. I think we asked a guy outside the gas station to buy them for us, if I remember correctly, off Old Canton Road down there. And got drunk enough to where, you know, and I remember being at the basketball game, and I'm like, you know, carrying on and like, you know, getting into the game, and like it's really school spirited but drunk kind of thing. And then I ended up being this other guy. I ended up keying a bunch of cars on the way out of the parking lot of the opposing team. And, you know, I didn't really grasp how big of a deal it was to key someone's car.
Yeah.
Now, as a man who has had to pay for things on my own, I know that I can't imagine a paint job is very cheap.
No.
You know? So that changed my life forever, that event. Because I went to military school after that.
So did you get caught keying the cars?
Got super caught.
Okay.
100% caught on camera.
Oh.
Yeah. 21st century, baby.
So get caught and then get shipped off to military school. What was that like?
That was an incredible experience.
Really?
Yes. Chamberlain Hunt Academy, shout out. I've never laughed as hard as I did at that place. Like, I'll put it that way. Like, it was really, really tough experience, but it was a very rewarding experience. And I met some really great guys there.
Well, I bet there's a lot of camaraderie amongst all the people there, like, when you're all in that tough situation together. Like, I mean, it's just like us addicts and alcoholics. Like, we may not all have drank and used together, but when we can relate stories back and forth of what it was like for us, what it felt like there's just a deeper connection when you kind of been through the shit together.
Right. And looking back, like, you know, I bet something like half of the guys there ended up with substance abuse issues. And I don't know. I'd say that's a conservative estimate.
Yeah.
And that was, looking back, the way I see it now is that was kind of my first treatment.
Okay.
That was my first corrective action.
Sure.
For my misbehavior, I guess you could say. And up until this point, everything that had gotten me into trouble was directly related to alcohol. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it was kind of like rehab with you know, Class A uniforms.
Was there any boozing, getting high while you were there? Or?
Oh yeah, there sure was. No alcohol. But I forget. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, I definitely remember, you know, gumming my Adderalls, and we brought them all back and crushed them up and snooted them, and you know, we were just being kids with pills, man. You know what I mean? Like, looking back, snorting Adderall is a waste of Adderall. I came to the conclusion eventually that just take the Adderall. No need to snort especially an XR.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, there's not really much reason to snort anything.
Anything, right?
I remember, I don't know. Yeah, you know, but I sure thought that there was a good damn reason at the time. I remember, I don't know if you did this too, but being in middle school at USJ, and you know, like, USJ had the setup in the cafeteria. Like, it wasn't like public school cafeteria where you getting some square pizza and shit. Like, you could buy all of the name brand candies, and I remember they had pixie sticks, and we would snort the pixie sticks in middle school. And like, right there should have told me that there's a problem. Like, I don't think normal people snort pixie sticks.
Yeah.
Or like crush up the Smarties and like blow them out like you're smoking it. Like, I didn't really have great aspirations, even as a 12-year-old, 6 years before I ever first got drunk. But.
Right. And it's funny you mentioned that. I remember we had a sketchbook in art class, and I drew a homeless man with a brown bottle of fucking alcohol. Like, that's what I liked to see. That was my aesthetic.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I enjoyed. And like, our buddy Caleb, his mom told me, asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said a drug dealer. Because I just watched Scarface for the first time, I was like half joking, but
Oh, dude, we all wanted to be
still.
Tony Montana a little
Right.
bit until the end of the movie.
Yeah, right.
Up until that point, it seemed like he was living a baller life.
Yeah. Just yeah. But yeah, that's funny you mentioned that. We snorted Sprite too. I can remember doing that out of the caps.
I don't remember doing that one. I bet that hurt.
Yeah.
So, military school, got a little high there. Kind of going on past that, you graduated from military school?
No, I was such a brat, man.
Yeah.
Gosh. Sorry, Mom and Uncle George and my grandparents. Like, I was such a brat. Good Lord. I gave them hell. I can remember, like, I went back to prep, to the high school I'd left, that I'd been asked to leave at that point. After much, and it's funny, like, my grades were so much better at military school.
Yeah.
Like, I was like A and B student. So I should have stayed, but I wanted to go back and play football, finish football. So
be with your friends, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I never entertained it as staying, but they had every reason to like make me do whatever at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I shouldn't have had any leverage.
Yeah.
They were probably just tired of hearing me bitch. You know what I mean?
Well, that's one thing, like, parents who haven't, been in recovery or had addiction issues, like, they just don't know, They're trying to do the best they can with what they've got at the time, and, we can be convincing because we're damn good liars, and we can tell a story and, manipulate and gaslight, and, like, I'm not proud of that behavior anymore, but, like, I did the same thing to get out of a lot of situations. I'd pull out the tears, and I'm never going to do it again, and just, like, full out. Could have got a Grammy for some of the performances that I put on.
Right.
So you graduated from prep. What's it like? I know you've been to rehab, twice?
I've done like 3 tours.
3 tours, okay. So, tell me about, like, did it get a lot worse when you graduated school?
Let's see. So when I graduated high school, I'd gotten arrested in Oxford for blacking out behind the chicken on a stick.
Oh.
With I had a broken blue moon in my, like, I was blacked out.
Yeah.
Complete, total blackout. And I got arrested. So anyways, my parents were like, you can't go to Ole Miss. Like, you're out of your mind. You're going to kill yourself. So I went to Raleigh, North Carolina to go to community college for a year, or for indefinitely, I suppose. And because my sister lived there, and they just wanted me to kind of try something else and get out of the environment. And what that looked like for me was like lots of Little Caesar pizza, 18 packs of PBR, and an eighth of weed a week. And what I would do is I'd get the eighth of weed, right? I didn't have a lot of money at the time, so I had a process down. I'd smoke the eighth of weed, and then I would have enough shit to scrape out of the bowl to get me high for like the last day that it didn't last me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had a whole process, and it was like I ballooned up 325 pounds. It was just PBR, pizza, weed, and resin bowls. Like,
that's a hell of a diet right there, my guy.
Mostly alone.
Yeah.
I had a couple of friends that really helped me out, that really were there for me because I didn't have hardly anybody besides my sister. But then again, some more blackouts, though. I remember going out with my sister and her friends a couple times and blacking out and making an ass of myself and embarrassing myself. And, at this point, I'd had countless episodes where I'd blacked out and done some stuff that was humiliating.
Yeah.
And still just not this, was not yet aware that I could be an alcoholic. Still thought an alcoholic was only like under a bridge.
Mm-hmm. You had to get to that certain point. So, like, did you feel down about yourself during this time? Like, what was your, like, I don't know, self-conversation like?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It wasn't, it would get much lower for sure. I can remember I had some bouts of depression for sure. A lot of that was related to Adderall, I think. I can remember my emotions being very up and down when I was taking Adderall in college, especially. I can remember, like, one time pulling up to my house and, like, just crying out of nowhere. And I just, like, And like, I don't know why I felt like that, because it wasn't because I felt like I had a drug and alcohol problem.
Yeah.
And it was just like some sort of like a, you know, being lost probably type of thing.
I've had some situations like that where, like, I mean, because for me, the drugs and alcohol were always just to escape my emotions. I didn't want to feel how Adam feels at baseline. But then there would be periods where, like, I remember doing that, just like, I don't know why I'm even crying right now, but just like, it's like my body forced an emotional release. Like, you've been bottling this shit up for 5 years now. Like, you're going to cry.
Yeah.
Which is, it's kind of weird thinking back on now, because I couldn't place where any of those feelings came from. Just be in like a depressive funk for a while, and then I'd have one good night of partying and it'd pull me back out of it, and I was off to the races again.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like, I guess at this point I was surrounded by friends who, you know, I had a lot of fun with, and that like weren't asking me to change what I was doing in regards to drinking and drugging.
Yeah.
Like,
they were on the same ride, even if they weren't going as hard.
Exactly. And so, you know, because I mean, at this time, you know, I'm, you know, 21 or less years old. So like, you know, these type of things don't look as bad on a 19-year-old as they do on a 27-year-old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, tell me about what that was like. Like, how old were you when you went to the first rehab?
Okay, so I ended up going back to Ole Miss. I begged and pleaded, like, I just want to be with my friends. Like, everyone's having a blast in Oxford, and I'm stuck up here in Raleigh, and I'm just like missing out. And so I ended up going to Ole Miss, and so eventually, it was wintertime, and I passed out behind someone's house, and it was like, you know, I think it was like 9 degrees or something that night.
Ooh.
And I woke up at the neighbor's house and covered in my own piss, and didn't know who they were, how I got there, yada, yada, yada. So next day, I get a call from my mom, and she is just crying her eyes out, telling me, like, I know what happened. And I'm like, genuinely, I had no idea what she was talking about, because I'd already brushed it off.
Yeah.
I'd already been like, that was nothing. No, like, oh, crazy night, whatever. But, like, she was scared to death that her son was going to kill himself.
Yeah. Which, I mean, if they hadn't brought you into their house, like, drunk, 9 degrees, sleeping outside, probably not in proper winter clothes, like, may not have killed you, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what would have happened. Yeah, I can remember I was wearing a Ralph Lauren under a Columbia zip up. Definitely no thermals.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't have done too well. But
not quite prepared for that weather.
No, not even close. But yeah, so after that, I got family was like, we think you need to go to rehab. I don't think they said we think. I think they said you need to go to rehab. Yeah. And I was just spitting venom about it. Like, because I was getting pulled out of school, I was just devastated. I guess that's an appropriate reaction to your first rehab, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're not ready to go on your own at that point, like somebody's trying to make you go. I'm like, y'all don't really understand. I don't have a problem. You don't know what it's like. You weren't there. Like, they exaggerated. I can just think of all the things that would come out of my mouth, just trying, desperately grasping at some like chance that I could get out of it.
Exactly. And so they you know, and they, again, my family's giving me so much you know, room to work, and like trying to work with me. Like, you're going to rehab, you pick it out. Like, you pretty much
so
pick
they
it
let
out.
you choose.
Let me pick it out. Let me choose. And at this point, I'd had a friend or two that had done like a wilderness thing, wilderness therapy type of treatment. And so I elected to do that. Legacy Outdoor Adventures in Loa, Utah. I think they're still out there. Wonderful place.
Yeah?
Uh-huh.
You had a good experience there.
Had an incredible experience there.
Did you leave there thinking that you were going to stay sober?
Not a chance.
Okay.
Yes.
So you were decided.
Right. And the whole time there, like, I wasn't trying to, be something that I wasn't in a sense, or like I could have. I got myself in a lot of shit because I would always be honest about not thinking I was an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
I could see where alcohol had caused problems in my life.
Yeah.
I could see that.
But you weren't willing to admit I'm an alcoholic.
I didn't think I was powerless over alcohol or drugs. And I guess in a sense I didn't have any way of knowing because I'd never tried. And so that'll come later. Yeah. Later on I would try to fight that powerlessness. But after that I went to sober living, Gaston House, Dallas, Texas, another great place. And I can remember like every other night I'm on the phone with my buddy or my uncle or my mom or somebody and talking about, I just don't think, like, I'm not getting it. Like, I don't think I'm an alcoholic. Like, this is, just always talking about, I don't think I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah. You just weren't convinced.
Not even close. And so eventually I ended up drinking. This was because at this point I'd been introduced to the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And they had told something about an allergy. And they talked about, stepping up to the nearest bar room to try some controlled drinking. So I was working at a restaurant at the time, and Black Eyed Pea in Dallas, Texas, over there at the Preston Center. And you know what I'm talking about? And so after work one day, I hopped on the bus, had about $70, $80 worth of tips in my pocket. No bills to speak of, obviously. I'm at sober living that I'm not paying for. So on the last bus stop, there's Twin Peaks. I think Mockingbird Station is what it's called out there, near Greenville Avenue. And so I hopped off, and I said, I'm going to have one beer at Twin Peaks, and I'm going to walk up there to the house meeting tonight, and they're not going to have a clue that I drank, thus proving I'm not an alcoholic. And I had one, and I was like, well, I mean, that went down too easily. Like, we're gonna do two.
Yeah.
Like, two's the same thing as one. And then three's the same thing as two, which is the same thing as one. I had three. I had four. By number 5, I was like, fuck it. Like, I'm going to get caught. I might as well get hammered.
Yeah. And
so I hit every bar on the way home like a pinball machine. And, showed up at like 1 a.m, just hammered. And, I didn't stick around much longer after that. They let me stay.
Yeah.
But I ended up just bailing out because I wasn't ready to stay sober I wasn't ready.
And so off to the races again from that point.
Yeah. At this point, because I'd moved back to Jackson, and my family was like, we're not going to give you money anymore. Like, because at this point, I'd had like a job sort of, but like I was getting, supported by my family financially. This time they were like, we're not giving you a dime for anything.
Okay.
So all I really had was like some clothes and a car. So I was staying with my mom and my grandmother at the time, and just went to work and started supporting myself. And it's hard to even remember what it was like those first few months back.
Yeah.
I can remember I definitely, at this point, I drank every day.
Was it just booze every day at this point, or had you
it was booze deeper? And it was pot. And
okay.
I think I was still prescribed Adderall at the time, which I hadn't discovered how to like party with that necessarily. I know I'd like snorted it like back in the day, but like it wasn't until later that I really started to abuse Adderall.
Okay.
It's like my mid to late 20s. I was 21 at this point in time. So I guess, and then eventually I moved out of my mom's house. That's when I could really drink how I wanted to drink. Because it was just me and a guy, and like, 20 something and in between. Like, he's still in college and I'm just working, and, just going out to bars and just drinking all the time.
Oh yeah. I remember the first place where I moved out. My buddy actually had owned this house, and he let me move into his guest room after I'd gotten kicked out of my mom's, then my dad's, then my grandparents' house. And he did the same shit I did. We like to fucking drink beer. We like to smoke pot. We like to rail cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
And neither one of us had a problem with how either of the other one was doing it. And I don't even know what he's doing nowadays. He maybe doesn't have a problem, or maybe does. Who knows? But either way, like, it was just like, man, freedom. Ain't nobody telling me shit. I got this bartending job. I don't have to go to work till 4 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, that environment was just so conducive to my alcoholism and addiction just snowballing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it went from I'm smoking a lot of pot, I'm drinking pretty regularly, to like I'm drinking, smoking pot, sitting at the kitchen table with my buddy, just by ourselves, snorting cocaine till like 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Like, not even doing anything cool. Like, it wasn't like, you know, you see in the movies, like, we're at this wild party with lights and girls dancing and everybody's having a good time. Just like me and him geeked out of our mind, just talking at 100 miles per hour about absolutely nothing, but like thinking that we've came up with the best idea in the world and like, dude.
Yeah.
And then rinse and repeat. What did it look like, you know, leading up into that next time you went into treatment?
At this point, okay, yeah, and like I said earlier, like, now that I had been exposed to what recovery looked like,
mm-hmm.
that's when the depression and the shame and the guilt really, around specifically my drug and alcohol abuse,
Yeah.
that's when things got really, really dark for me. And, you know, mostly in waves. I can remember I'd been to my first 12-step meeting like a year before, and then I can remember popping in every now and then after a bad weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kept I'd wake up and I'd be faced with, I can remember these words rung true in my ears on those bad mornings from this guy named Robert at the Gaston House in Dallas, that sober living I was at. He told me, like, if you keep living like this, because I told him I didn't want to be anything like my father,
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't know, didn't have a relationship with. He was like, if you keep acting like, keep doing all this, you're going to end up just like that.
Mm.
And so the idea that I couldn't have the life I wanted and drink at the same time,
Yeah.
kept, that was just a constant battle within me.
You were going to have to make a decision, and you kind of knew it.
Right. And I didn't want to give it up.
Mm-hmm.
It's all I'd known at this point for a very long time. And, you know, what that looked like was, you know, I wasn't like guzzling vodka in the mornings or anything like that. What it looked like for me was just, I'm a big binge drinker, more blackouts here and there, you know, waking up with my foot on the brake of the car, and the car, you know, like just waking up in parking lots, or like,
Damn.
just random stuff, like little happenings just all over town. Some of them public, some of them not so public, and all equally humiliating. Humiliation is like the common denominator in what really drove me to get sober. I was humiliated.
Yeah.
With how I acted. And around this time, I got into a relationship with a girl, and that was the first time I'd really been in a relationship. And I was probably, you know, I was probably 24, maybe 25 at this time. And could really see how my drinking and drugging was affecting that relationship. It just like amplified everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's one thing like when it's kind of like just me who's like, but like enter someone else into the mix, and like it's just a lot louder.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to maintain any semblance of a stable relationship when you're drinking and using.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure some people can in moderation, and it's fine, but like the way that I was doing it, where I just wrecked women's lives. Like, I would sell this nice, pretty picture, because I could hold it together long enough to get you to like me or get you to, you know, want to date me. And then, like, inevitably we'd move in together, and then, like, there was no escape. I couldn't go back to my house and do what I wanted to do with the boys. Like, I was going to do what I wanted to do regardless, and that meant that you were going to see the absolute worst of me. And, like, I remember so many mornings waking up from a blackout and like whoever I was with being pissed, like ready to slit my throat. And I'm like, oh, that was a great night's sleep. How are you doing, babe? And they're like, you don't remember anything you did last night? No, not really. I thought it was a pretty chill night. I'm like, well, let me tell you. And then some wild shit about how I was a dick or how I was like aggressive or mean or yelled at them or like ran my car into the back of the carport. Like just some stupid shit, you know?
Right. So stuff like that, like, adds up. And, like, it was crazy, though, because I'd be licking my wounds for, like, a day or two, but then I'd just get right back to it. And honestly, I'd catch those endorphins back, I think, or whatever, and, like, and feel a little bit better, and also kind of self-medicate with the drugs and alcohol.
It's crazy how quickly that turnaround would be for me, because, like, in those mornings like that, like, I would go straight into damage control. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to mix those substances anymore. And then, like, 48 hours later, like, it's like I could not for the life of me remember how I felt 2 mornings ago. If I could have held on to that feeling, I probably wouldn't have needed all the help that I needed to get sober, because it was like it would come, I would feel it, it was gone. Why am I not drinking tonight? I don't know. Let's go to the bar. Like, and it just like it wasn't even a second thought. There wasn't this long, hard decision of like, should I, shouldn't I? It's just like the opportunity presented itself. I'm like, hell yeah, brother, let's go.
That's right. Yeah, and at this point, I feel like I haven't mentioned, but like, and so when I lived in Oxford when I was at school, it was kind of hard to get cocaine up there. But once I'd been introduced to cocaine and loved it, that's when I really, that was a perfect night consisted of cocaine as far as I was concerned. So when I moved back to Jackson, cocaine entered the chat in a big way. You know what I mean? Like, because it was a lot easier to get.
Yeah.
So, that dimension was added to it, which, A, cost me a lot of money, and B, amplified the depression, the shame, and the guilt of those mornings. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, that Coke, alcohol, hangover, that's a hell of a combo.
Yeah.
So you went to another rehab, and then there was the third and final rehab where you actually found sobriety. Let's kind of move into that, like what it looked like, if there was like one big final rock bottom before you went to that rehab, and then what that looked like getting sober, and kind of what your life's looking like now.
Yeah. So at this point I was on drug court, and I got I failed a bunch of drug tests for alcohol. And so I went to Desert Hope in Las Vegas, Nevada. American Addiction Centers fixed me up. Michelle.
Shout out,
Michelle. Went there for like 2 weeks. They didn't really, they weren't super, like, it just kind of felt like I was at a hospital.
Yeah.
Then I went to some classes, and they fed me well.
Felt pretty casual.
Played some volleyball. Smoked 2 packs a day. But, I basically was just drying out. And what they told me was to, get back, when you get off the plane, when you go home, go to a, 12-step meeting, and like the same day that you get home.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that. And I remember being so scared, because it was like, I was only there for 2 weeks. I was like, I remember my uncle asking me if I needed to stay longer, and I was like, George, I just think I'm going to drink again. I don't want you to waste your money.
Yeah.
I'm just going to come home. And, I was scared I was going to get drunk in the airport. The only reason I did get drunk was like, well, George bought me my uncle bought me a plane ticket, I can't drink now. That'd look really bad.
Yeah.
That would look really bad if I did that. So next thing I know, I come back home to basically the exact same life that I'd just left, physically, like same job, same girlfriend, house, our dogs, So the only thing that was different was that I started doing recovery stuff and meeting recovery people.
Mm-hmm.
And, it started to feel good to wake up those mornings without the guilt and the shame.
Yeah.
Be damned.
Yeah, dude, that's like, it seems so obvious, but to like people who are living the way that we're living, like, you don't even realize, like, at least I didn't, like, I can't remember, I don't know how many years had gone by where I had woken up hungover off of some substance. Like, I hadn't had a morning where I just woke up, like, clear headed, ready to tackle the day in, like, I don't know, at least the last 3 or 4 years before I got sober. And so I remember that feeling of like getting through detox in rehab and then just like waking up and being like, oh, I feel well rested. I'm going to go shower, shit, shave, get a cup of coffee. Like, is this how normal people feel every day? Like, holy shit.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's exactly right. And I remember just waking up and like, you know, in the morning time slowly became, or quickly perhaps became, my favorite part of the day. You know, wake up and I just, for once in so long, I felt like I was doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And I felt hope about my future. But on the flip side, I felt hope for the future by living one day at a time, like some people kept telling me to do. And that for the first time, I didn't care about not drinking at my wedding in the future.
Yeah.
Or like never being able to have a beer at the beach again. Like, I didn't care about that. And I think at that point I knew I can go back to that. Like, because I've done it before.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to pay the price, but that's available to me.
I had somebody tell me that when I first got sober, that, you know, like, give this thing a shot for a year. If you don't like it, if your life doesn't get better, that dope ain't going anywhere. The booze ain't going anywhere. The pot's still going to be around. Like, all of that shit you were doing and all of those, or most of those people that you were doing it with, are still going to be right there waiting for you. So why don't we just try something that we haven't been trying? And like, that made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the one day at a time. You know, I had reservations about like just exactly the things you said. Like, man, would I have a dry wedding? Kind of sounds fucking lame. But like now I'm like, who cares? Like, I don't need booze to get out on the dance floor. I don't need it to have a good time. It no longer is anything that would add anything to the experience for me. But I think what you said is so crucial for people early in recovery, just getting into recovery. Like, you don't have to think about it as I'm never going to drink for the rest of my life. Like, I'm just not going to drink today. Maybe I will tomorrow. Yeah. And I wake up tomorrow and, you know what? I'm just not going to drink today. And all of a sudden you do that and you got a whole lot of 24 hours put together. And you've been sober, what, over 3 years now?
Yeah, I picked up 3 years in October.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And then, like, it all just started because I'm not going to drink today. And and then those days roll into each other and you get some momentum going. You know what I mean? So what's it been like, you know, after getting a little time under your belt, getting into sobriety? Like, what's life like for you now?
Man, it's just like, it's so peaceful.
Yeah.
Like, I just have less bullshit and stuff like that. Like, I mean, I work, I show up to work, you know, most of the time I'm at least 10 minutes early.
Mm-hmm.
And I wake up 2 hours before work just so I can have some alone time with myself and with God and whatever. And I find every hobby that I had, you know, I love going to see live music. I love playing golf. And I was focused on those two. Those two things I used to drink a lot with that I thought I would never enjoy again.
Yeah.
I've now found that I love doing both of those things, and I don't need alcohol to do it. And that was a hard sell to me back in the day.
Heck yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like, we didn't go on the golf course without some booze and at least some weed. And I remember my buddy Victor, who's definitely not one of us, but, you know, we partied together some back in the day, and been one of my most supportive friends since I got sober, you know, out of the people that I still talk to from my old life, so to speak. But I remember going golfing with him And, you know, out of respect for me, he didn't have a drink or anything on the course either. And we both shot like the best game that we had ever shot. And I was like, holy shit. It turns out the booze does not help my game. Because that's what I'd be like, you know, I just got to take the edge off, relax a little bit.
Exactly.
I'll swing smoother. Like, dude, I used to play so bad. I think the last round of golf I played before I got sober, it may not have been the last, but it's the one that sticks out in my mind. Like, my buddy had woken me up from a hangover. He had some weed brownies. I ate 2 of them, took 2 Percocets, and then started drinking on the course. And I don't know if I hit the fairway a single time. Like, it was tree line to sand trap to water hazard to fuck this. I don't even like golf. It's a stupid ass game. Y'all finish out the hole. Like,
Yeah.
and then I'd be like, oh yeah, man, I love golf. Like, what? I didn't love any of that. I was miserable the whole time. But now I do love golf. Like, I mean, it's been a while, but we went and played, you know, a handful of months ago and like had a great time.
Yeah.
Stone cold sober. Smoked a nice stogie out there.
Right.
But like,
Treat it like a sport.
yeah, like,
Because it's a sport.
like I want to get better at this thing.
Exactly.
You know?
And that's how I've approached a lot of things in my life, like I never had before. And you're talking about the physical, like, or I like physically, like, I don't feel as tethered like alcohol especially did for me. Like, went to a concert in the dead heat of summer, went to an Ole Miss game in the dead heat of summer, and like I was just like running around the stadium as I needed to. If I needed a drink, I climbed up the stairs and I went exactly where I needed to go, and I didn't want to puke at all. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like I felt I didn't feel like bogged down or like that sick feeling that I used to always feel.
It's amazing how much better drinking water in the heat feels than drinking booze.
Who knew?
Yeah.
What?
Who would have thunk it?
Right?
You were talking about the live music too. You know, that's been an experience that I've had as well in sobriety. Like, I used to go to a lot of shows and do a lot of trippy shit at a lot of shows, along with other substances. And I remember thinking when I first got sober, like, man, I got to leave that part of my life behind. And that's not at all been the case for me. You know, I've been able to experience going to 3 or 4 different music festivals now, a whole bunch of shows. And, like, at the music festivals especially, like, rampant drug and alcohol use right in my face. Like, I've had people try to pass me a joint, try to give me a hit of some powder out of their little powder necklace that they've got. And, like, it's not even a thought anymore of like, should I? Maybe. It's just like, nah, bro, that ain't for me. Appreciate it, you know? And then, like, I can still have a conversation with the dude who tried to pass me the blunt. You know, I'm not going to hang out with those people in a regular scenario. And I do think it's important to mention, you know, when I put myself in those scenarios, I do it with sober people, with other people who are doing the same thing that I'm doing. And it's not because if they're not there that I'm just going to instantly grab a drink. But, like, if I did ever find myself in an uncomfortable situation, there's something about having your people with you that makes the whole thing a little bit lighter.
Sure.
But, you know, what's that experience been like for you, being in the jam band scene and now kind of getting back into going to shows?
Yeah, so, you know, huge Widespread Panic fan. And saw them for the first time sober earlier this year in May. Or excuse me, last year. That was 2023. And it's incredible. They have like the Grateful Dead had the Wharf Rats. Widespread Panic has the Gateway. It's a group of people who meet up at the shows, and if you look for the yellow balloons and you follow the yellow balloons, there's a bunch of people sober on purpose at a concert.
Hell yeah.
And then I was at Dealing Hall here in Jackson a few months ago, a drive-by trucker show, and I'll be damned if there wasn't yellow balloons set up. And I wasn't even expecting that.
Yeah.
And then boom, like I found my people. And like they're there for people who are, you know, they're especially there for the newcomer in a sense, like to you know, people that were having trouble staying sober at the shows. But also, like, I've met so many great people through that network. It's like a subculture within a subculture.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's such a cool thing that the jam bands all kind of have that scene of, you know, like you said, follow the yellow balloons.
Right.
And you'll find your people. So I guess we're kind of getting ready to go ahead and wrap this thing up. We've been going a little over an hour here. But, you know, I did want to ask you, you know, if you had one piece of advice or wisdom to give to somebody who's wanting to get sober, or just trying to get sober, what would you tell them?
Ooh, that's a tough one. You know, go to rehab and dry out. And if you still, gosh, afraid to say, I don't know. I had to try controlled drinking.
Yeah.
Straight up, like, be careful out there. But it wasn't until I had enough evidence to play my tape forward when I wanted that drink and drug, like I can today. Today, it's a hard sell to myself that I can control my drug and alcohol use.
Yeah.
And I only knew one way to get there, and I didn't even know that's how I was getting there. But, and my advice is also that, you know, it doesn't matter how hopeless you are. Like, if it works for me, it can work for you.
Absolutely.
And if I can get sober, you can get sober. And I've seen some incredible stories along the way too of people that would say the same thing. And it's not that bad.
Yeah.
It's not that bad.
It really, as a matter of fact, it's not that bad. Like, it's really damn great.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't have ever imagined wanting to live the rest of my life sober. Like, I remember when I was a bartender, like, looking out at the restaurant at all these families eating dinner, and I'm like, dude, everybody's on something. Like, I truly thought that, like, there's no way all these people were happy without any drugs or alcohol. And it turns out there's a whole world full of people who don't drink, who don't use, who live happy, joyous, and free 365 days a year. That's not to mean that you're not going to have bad experiences, bad days, family members won't pass away, you'll get in a car crash, all that. But, like, the strength that comes from being able to be present in those situations, to be there for your family members when somebody passes away, you know, to be able to not be afraid when the cops come after you get in a car crash because of what they're going to find in your car. Like, and I know we've talked about it before and you'd agree, but, like, I've never experienced freedom like I have in sobriety. And that's what I was always searching for. Like, when we talked about getting my own place for the first time and, like, wanting to be able to do whatever, I just wanted this freedom, but I never had it. Like, drugs and alcohol had me in a chokehold. And that's just not the case anymore. And, you know, like you said, if it works for a low down pill popping heroin junkie like me, like, it'll work for anybody, man. You know, there's a reason that 12 steps have been getting people sober for close to 100 years now. Like, and that's not to say that that's the only way. You know, there's all types of different recovery programs out there, and any way that you can get to sobriety is an absolutely beautiful thing. But you know, guys, we got one last thing before we go is I've got one of our Whiskey and Milk shirts on here today. We've got a whole bunch of other ones available on the website. You can check us out at whiskeyandmilk.com. Make sure you follow along on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all at Whiskey and Milk. You can find us on YouTube at Recovery Uncovered. And with that, we will see you guys next time.
Attention, now arriving at your destination. The last house on the block.